What's up, folks? How's it going? This is Waj. Hope you guys had a great New Year's, and we're going to start 2016 with a bang with a brand new review of the HP Envy 34C. Now, this is basically a curved ultra widescreen monitor that has a native resolution of 3440 by 1440, has some really cool integrated speakers, and I've been using this thing for a couple of days now for gaming, for doing some work on, and of course watching a lot of media content. And I'm going to show you if this thing is worth owning, and if you're interested in a monitor like this is definitely one to consider because it comes at a pretty competitive price point compared to everything else. So without any further ado, let's get right into the full review. Now, physically, you can see that the HP Envy 34C has a very gentle curve, and it adds a very subtle wraparound effect to your viewing experience, and it's going to make viewing photos and videos a little bit more immersive. Now, in terms of the aesthetics and design, I do like the overall look of this monitor. The back has a flat white look, and the front of the monitor is mostly black, which definitely makes everything look pretty sleek. And of course, on the left and right side, we have large stereo speakers, which definitely adds a cinematic look to the monitor. Of course, this does mean that compared to most other traditional 34-inch ultra-wide monitors, this is definitely longer, measuring about 95 centimeters in terms of its width, but in terms of height, it's fairly standard at 47.7 centimeters. In terms of thickness, you're looking at just under 20 centimeters, which is fairly acceptable because this is a curved display. Now, in terms of glare and reflections, we do have an anti-glare coating on top of the screen, so it's fairly good and versatile in any kind of lighting condition that you're going to put it in. Additionally, you have a very well-made stand that comes with the monitor that gives you up to 30 degrees of tilt functionality. And on top of that, if you want to wall mount or put this on a desk arm, you do have a standard 100mm VESA mount adapter, which is really easy to install, and it's going to look really great on a desk mounted setup or even wall mounted. Now, in terms of the physical buttons, they are accessible but hidden away at the bottom and back of the monitor, which is a bit awkward to use, and certainly once you have the monitor set up right, it's certainly a little bit hard to gauge the function of all those buttons. But thankfully, HP does give you a nice remote control that gives you power functionality, volume, as well as full navigational controls for your menu. And speaking of the menu itself, the menu is very well laid out, very easy to use and navigate through. Of course, if you're talking about advanced color parameter options, it's a little bit rudimentary, especially for this caliber of monitor. Now, in terms of connectivity and ports, we do have a couple of different options. Firstly, you have two HDMI inputs. One of those ports is actually a mobile high definition certified, so you can use the included cable to connect your phone or tablet to the actual display and use it as an external monitor. In addition to the HDMI connections, you also have a full-size DisplayPort 1.2 standard, which can be converted into a Thunderbolt or a mini DisplayPort connection. Furthermore, you have two USB 3.0 connections, as well as a headphone jack located at the front bottom portion of the monitor, and right beside that jack we have a volume dial. Now, one of the great things about this monitor definitely has to be the speakers, and it's one thing that separates this ultra widescreen display from everything else. Most of the other monitors in this category, the speakers that they come with are fairly flat sounding, and they're hidden away in not the most ideal condition for your listening experience. Here on the 34C, the stereo speakers actually do a great job in delivering pretty high fidelity sound. Now, obviously they're not going to be as good as a dedicated stereo system or a high-end speaker system, but they're definitely somewhere in between. They're actually DTS certified, and there's even a good amount of bass that you get out of these speakers. And let's go ahead and listen so you can judge for yourself. Now, one of the things a 21:9 aspect ratio display really shines in is watching film shot in CinemaScope, and there's thousands of them out there. It's one of the most ideal ways to watch a movie, and having a monitor that can display the proper aspect ratio of your films really gives you the opportunity to rediscover all your favorite films. Now, on the flip side, when you're watching traditional 16:9 content, you are going to get bars on both sides of the display, which is certainly a bummer, but it's something that you're going to always have to deal with when dealing with displays that have this aspect ratio. Now, from a workstation PC standpoint, a lot of people like using these type of monitors because, one, you have a tremendous amount of resolution to play with. Also, the format works, especially if you're working with multiple monitors, but now you have all those monitors and resolution in one display, which makes everything a lot more seamless. So here you can see I'm working on an After Effects project on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, I have a couple of different windows open for my Twitter, email, and you can obviously obviously customize to your heart's content with a whole bunch of different apps to really utilize your multitasking performance and optimize your workflow. Now, one of the things I really like about using this monitor is the fact that you don't really have to deal with any DPI scaling like you do with some smaller size 4K displays. And essentially, if you're coming from a full HD monitor or even a 1440p monitor that's 27 to 20 inches, this would actually be a great upgrade because you're not going to have to deal with any eye strain issues where text and details are too small because the resolution is too high, especially on the smaller size 4K displays. And you're not going to have to mess around with any DPI scaling settings in Windows, which is certainly not supported by all the different applications and isn't the best solution out there when dealing with high density desktop displays. Now let's talk about the image quality and performance we get out of the 34C. Now firstly, this is an LED backlit display that's using SVA switching technology. So in terms of viewing angles, it's very similar to IPS. So you get up to 178 degrees with very minimal brightness and color shifts. A little bit of a vertical shift, but nothing to be too concerned about because most people are going to be viewing it at a straight on vantage point because of that curved shape itself. Now, one of the areas that this monitor really shines in is the black performance. It delivers very dark and deep, rich blacks, and there's very little backlight bleeding itself, so very excellent for watching movies and using this monitor in dimly lit environments. Of course, in terms of brightness, this is no slouch. It can deliver well over 300 CDM squared, and in terms of the brightness deviation, it's very uniformly backlit, no real hotspots in any particular regions based on our testing, so excellent in terms of those parameters. Furthermore, in terms of the color gamma, looking at the sRGB color space, it gets an average delta E rating of 1.85, which is actually pretty good, right in between a consumer grade monitor and a reference grade monitor designed for professionals. And in terms of the color accuracy on the sRGB color spectrum, it also achieves 100% accuracy, so you can definitely use this if you're video editing, photo editing, through any of those means. This is definitely a product designed more for that end of the spectrum than the gaming end of the spectrum. And speaking of the gaming performance, obviously playing games on a curved 3440 by 1440 display is absolutely amazing no matter what type of monitor it is. And even though the response time on the 34C isn't that great at 8 milliseconds once you set it to the overdrive mode, compared to most other traditional gaming grade monitors that have a much faster input lag and much higher refresh rate than 60 Hertz. There's definitely some faster monitors more suitable for gaming applications. But for me personally, I probably game around 30 to 40% of the time, and most of the time I'm doing my work. So this is perfect for my particular needs, and it's very passable as a monitor that's kind of jack of all trades, but it's definitely geared towards more work than game. But you can do both of them and have an equal amount of fun if that's possible. Now, to sum up everything we've talked about thus far, I would have to say that the HP Envy 34C is a pretty decent overall widescreen monitor, especially if you're going to do a whole bunch of different things on it. Sure, it's not as good as some of the dedicated gaming grade monitors because the response time is not that great, but the viewing angles and the overall color accuracy is fairly good for the particular price point. And if you're into media creation, content consumption, and playing games every now and then again, this is definitely a great experience, especially with the high resolution, the good overall panel, and that slight curve definitely gives you a sense of immersion and experience you typically won't find in other types of setups. So if you really want to step up your game and perhaps you don't want to go all the way to 4K because the resolution on that is not as usable as a monitor like this where you don't have to deal with any DPI scaling issues, pixels, and text is perfectly sized at 100% scaling. So this is more of a real world monitor that you can use every day without having any kind of serious issues with when it comes to the actual size of the pixels themselves. 4K will mature and get better, but this is a great solution for the here and now. But really, other than that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions, definitely let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for your support. We'll see you later. Take care.